So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio and my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited that my guest today is the fantastically talented Katherine Hicks. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Matthew.
Now, I mean, you're over in LA at the moment. So I just wanted to start off by asking, how is it all over there? How is everything? How has the last sort of year and a half been?
Wow. Yeah, good question. I mean, I think worldwide it's been difficult. In Los Angeles, 2020, if I look back on 2020, that definitely was more intense. The administration that the country was under, there was riots, going past my house, and people were very distressed and very unhappy. And the pandemic impacted that greatly. And then, 2021, it's so strange, and I'm sure everyone worldwide can relate. There's parts of the country that want to believe that there's no such thing as COVID, and the numbers obviously in America are still very high. So, I think it's just a matter of being safe and sensible and grateful for what you have and keeping your head up.
I mean, I imagine for you it must also be difficult because you've obviously got family back in Australia. So, I mean, do you have any idea when you'll be able to get home, or is that still very much up in the air?
Yeah, that has been challenging. It's like in 2019, for example, I went back to Australia 3 times. The last time I was there was December or early January, so December 2019. I had flights booked last year and they were cancelled a few times. And then they have said that they're reopening in November to international travel, but we'll see. I mean, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Now, during the heights of obviously the many lockdowns that we've had over the last couple of years, did you find yourself learning any new skills, doing anything that you wouldn't otherwise get to do normally?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually learned how to use Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, and I started this tiny little online business making cute bandanas and little bow ties for dogs because it was just so uplifting for me during all of that. So that was something new I did, and yeah, it was a weird time.
And I mean, in terms of obviously work for you, I imagine it has been a bit of a tough one because obviously a lot of acting, a lot of, theatres and TV shows, films, all of that has been really badly affected. I mean, how did it affect you? Were you in the middle of anything at the time that it happened, or were you kind of sort of lucky?
I was. I mean, I'd been in the States, I think for a year and a half or something like that. And I was about to start 2 projects, and I was like so excited because I finally had a project to work on. And one got cancelled and has never come back to life, and the other one might come back to life, but we're not sure. So yeah, it's definitely been challenging. I mean, I think in Australia it's been even harder for artists because there's no support for them financially. So yeah, it's definitely, look out for your local artists during this time, everybody.
Now for you, where did the love of acting come from? Where did it start for you? I mean, do you remember the sort of the moment you thought this is where I want to be in the future?
Well, it's interesting because it's such a love-hate relationship. I started acting when I was a little girl. My mum was often doing theatre as, I guess a creative outlet for her. And my grandfather was the same, actually. He was a doctor, but he also was a singer and a musician and was in a lot of shows. So it's just something that I think my family has done as a creative outlet for years. And so when I was little, I think I did my first play when I was like 4 or something, and I can remember it vividly, the experience. Yeah, it was really fun, and just like I remember the theatre lights and just thinking, oh, that light's so beautiful. I mean, I probably didn't say beautiful when I was 4. But yeah, and then I just sort of did it my whole life. And then when I was 16, I was like, oh, I want to move to Sydney and try and be an actor. And So I did that, and I was lucky enough to work on Heartbreak High. And then after that experience, I was like, I'm not sure, it's a very challenging industry for a lot of reasons, but I'm one of those people that just loves a challenge. And if someone tells me I can't do something, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. So here I am years later, still trying to do it. And there's definitely been times where I've gone, I think I'm ready for something else. And I'm sort of in that place at the moment where I want to expand. So I've started doing some other creative things, and directing, and actually comedy. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, obviously, you mentioned Heartbreak High there. That was obviously your first, venture into doing TV. What was that like for you as obviously a young actor going onto TV for the first time? Was it daunting? What were your memories of that show?
Yeah, it was daunting. I think it was a very different time than it is now. So obviously we didn't have social media the way that we have social media now. So I think in a lot of ways it was more protected. And for me, it was really just, I remember the experience that was in front of me. I was very nervous first day of filming, probably the first month of filming. But they had exceptional acting coaches and voice coaches, and they created a really healthy culture amongst all the young actors. So it was a really awesome experience to have.
And I mean, you've had the pleasure of doing some great roles. I mean, obviously, you did Poppy on Out of the Blue, which was shown here in the UK. It was kind of replaced Neighbours when Neighbours jumped from the BBC to Channel 5. So, I mean, what were your memories of that show? Because it was such a gripping show that obviously only ran for a short while, which was such a shame in my opinion. But what was your memories of that show?
Well, again, we had such a positive experience on that show. They did a 2 or 3 week, I think, rehearsal process, which is kind of unheard of in TV. And that gave us the opportunity to really build relationships between the characters. And, getting to work with that cast was probably one of the highlights for sure, because it was a huge cast and everyone was so talented and came from such varied backgrounds that you were always learning from each other. I think I just had so much fun on that show. It was ridiculous. I mean, I remember Charlotte and I just, oh my gosh, just cracking up. We had this storyline where her character's name was Tracy, I think. And she was pretending she couldn't walk. And, she's like a very petite woman and I'm a very tall woman, and we had this scene where Poppy falls over a cliff and then Tracy jumps out of the wheelchair to pull her up, and we were just in hysterics. We had to keep calling cut and trying again, because I was like, what do you mean she pulls Poppy up? Anyway, it was very fun show. I was very lucky to work on that.
But it must have been disappointing, because obviously it was left on a big cliffhanger with gunshots going off. We didn't know who was killed, and then we never got to find out, because obviously the show never continued. I mean, you, as an actor, were you quite disappointed that you didn't get to continue on that show, and that the show was just sort of stopped very suddenly?
It's showbiz. You've got to expect it. I mean, I was very sad that I didn't get to work with those people again, and the character was so much fun, but you just got to roll with the punches.
And I mean, another show which I was hooked on was Winners and Losers. We have to, of course, talk about Winners and Losers. I mean, I previously had on this show, I had Damien Bodie, who, of course, played Jonathan, and your half-sister on the show, Melissa Bergland, who is fantastic. Yes. I mean, to go into a show that's obviously been running for a little while, and to kind of appear, because you were obviously the half-sister who no one knew about. So to play such an interesting character must have been quite fun.
Yeah, it was great. And, that cast, again, I've been so lucky because the lead, obviously it's a female-driven show. They were all so professional and so welcoming and fun and hilarious that I was so comfortable coming onto that show. And, it was a really fun character as well, very different to the other girls. And, it was nice to have that point of difference for sure.
And I mean, when you go onto a show, sort of, the sort of established show that's been going for a few years, and you come in, I imagine there's nerves as to like, how will I be received? What will people think of this character? And although it turned out, obviously people loved the character. I mean, for you, are there nerves when you join a show later on?
That's a good question. Honestly, I'm such a pragmatist. No, I was just like, I've got a job to do. I'm going to show up and do it to the best of my ability. And, whether or not the audience likes me, you can't really even think about that. And a lot of that is actually the writer's job anyway. It's like they're going to either, however they write that character, like you bring your own personality to it for sure. But if they'd written Sam as a cold-hearted bitch, then there's nothing I can do about it. And there's always going to be someone your character speaks to, and someone and some people who hate your character, and that's just really got nothing to do with your job. Sorry to be so pragmatic.
That's all right. Now, I mean, would you say there's a role that you've done that's been a favourite? Is there a project that you've worked on that's been a personal favourite of yours over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely loved working on Rescue Special Ops. Like looking back on that, it was such a great opportunity, and such a fun role because, with a lot of TV, you're in studio and it's, you're sitting, you're standing, you're talking, you're not really being physical or a physical performer. And I trained in theatre after I did Heartbreak High. And the great thing about Rescue Special Ops is it gave you that opportunity to be very physical in your performance, and really high stakes, life and death every episode. So I would say that, like, in terms of the drama element of it was such a great opportunity. I'd love to do that show again. I'd love to bring it back, but I think we're all a bit older now, so we might be more like we're running out of breath, trying to rescue people. But it was definitely one of my favorites.
And I mean, I imagine that because you've done the theatre, you've done TV. For you, is there a favourite? Is there one that you prefer doing, or do you love to be able to mix and do the both?
Well, I think for a start, being an actor is such a privileged, it's a challenging career choice, but, it's a very privileged thing to be able to do. And so any opportunity I get, I definitely feel very like lucky, and I actually love mixing the two. Obviously, it's been very hard the last 2 years for any live performance. But yeah, I have done some Zoom performances, believe it or not. And even just having that interaction with people, there's nothing really quite like it. But yeah, I guess, you just look at it as two very sort of different arms to the art form. It's, yeah, very different. It's like if you were a musician, it's like studio and live performance, different skill set.
And I mean, is there a dream going forward? Is there something that you would love to do that you've not had the chance to do yet, for the future?
That is a great question. And yes, there's so many. There's so many of those aspirations and hopes and dreams, of people who I'd love to work with and characters I'd love to play. And I really love working in accent as well, which is one thing that's been really enjoyable for me living in the United States, is that obviously I'm not American. I mean, most people, I think we hear the American accent so often, we don't really think of it as an accent, but going for auditions for, characters that are from places with really strong accents, like the South or New York or the Bronx or Queens, that to me is really fun. So I'd love to play a character that feels like a character to me. That's something that I would love to do.
And I mean, talking about the accents, I mean, that must be, I mean, I couldn't even imagine doing it myself. But for you, how do you kind of get into the sort of the mindset and get the accents right? Because, I mean, I suppose there's a bit of mimic and you just have to, I suppose, get into the character. But when you're doing the accents, how do you prepare for them?
That's a great question as well. And accents are actually very technical. So in my training anyway, you actually learn them phonetically. So you get to understand how people speak phonetically and how they use different sounds in different words. And that actually shapes the accent. So you've got to consider the phonetics and the pace of an accent and the rhythm of an accent. And yeah, it's really interesting, like, because you can do a scene and for me, like, the character is the way into the accent. I get a feeling for it. But then you can work with a coach just specifically on the accent. And it's like, I guess the best thing I could equate it to is like singing, you know, there's certain notes you have to hit. So yeah, it's actually very technical, but it's that really fun part of acting where you start to let go of technique and move into just like expression of character. That's the really fun part where you're like, oh, I did all my homework. Yes, now I can just have fun, you know.
And do you have a favourite accent to do, or one that you feel most proud of, that when you do it, you sort of think, actually, no, I think that is a really good one? Because I mean,
that's such a nice question. I mean, I think, you know, I'm Australian, so we don't really feel proud of a lot. You know, we're very like, I don't know what the British perspective on Australians is. What would you say?
See, I would say, I don't know. It's a hard one, really. I mean, I've never had.
You can be honest. You can be honest.
See,
what do you guys think of it?
I always find Australians to be lovely. I've never had a bad, you know, a bad interaction with anyone, you know, from Australia. And I mean, I've interviewed quite a few over the years. You're also lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think Australians and British, we're similar, you know, culturally. We, you know, and that's a big thing moving to America as well. Is one thing I love about Americans is that they really like earnestly celebrate you know, their achievements and their ambition. And, you know, like people here are like, oh, that's amazing, you're incredible. And I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, don't talk about me, you know. So to go, oh, something you're proud of, it's just interesting because, yeah, I don't think I really think like that. But I definitely love accents. I love doing are, you know, like a Bronx accent. I love doing like a Texan accent. I love doing an Irish accent, even though I'm sure it's terrible. An Irish person would probably want to push me in the lake if they heard me, but I love it.
I think that's the thing, is that the Brits and the Australians are very kind of reserved, and I suppose don't sing their own praises as much. Whereas, yeah, like you say, the Americans are very, you know, bold and proud, and
Yeah.
you know, they're always like, oh, you know, you did very well, and that was amazing. And
yeah, and they mean it.
Yeah, not saying that we're
it.
Yeah, I mean, not saying that we're, you know, we won't celebrate other people, but when it's put on ourselves, I think we kind of shy away a bit.
We're very comparatively, you know, it's interesting actually, because obviously coming here as an actor, you know, you have to have meetings, and they're very accustomed to people showing how hungry they are and how ambitious they are, and actually having a pitch about themselves, you know. And that's very counterintuitive as an Australian. So a lot of my meetings I would open with, because you know, Australians are also very direct and very, most of the time, very honest. So I would just say, hey guys, I'm just going to start the meeting by saying it's culturally counterintuitive for me to sell myself. It doesn't mean I'm not competent. It doesn't mean I don't have skills. I just don't like to talk about it. I think that kind of sums it up, you know, because quite often it can be interpreted as insecurity. And I think also that self-deprecation, which is what makes, you know, I think the British sense of humor that is dry and witty with a little bit of self-deprecation is just so wonderful. It's, you know, and I think that self-deprecation here can often get misinterpreted as insecurity, you know, like, I think, you know, like once I was like, oh gosh, I can't wear that, I look like a fat cow. And my friend was like, oh my God, don't say that about yourself. You know, you shouldn't put yourself down. I'm like, I'm not. Very funny. Yeah.
Would you ever like to come and work over in the UK? I mean, have you ever had the chance to come over to the UK?
I've never had the chance. I would love it. Actually, my grandmother is from Newcastle, my dad's mum. And then, I mean, like most Australians, my family background is British and Irish. And I think actually our first ancestor who moved to Australia was an Irish priest. So I don't know if that's better or worse than a convict, but definitely would love to come and work in the UK. I mean, the actors there, it's the birthplace of theatre and drama, and well, it's not, Greece is, but ancient Greece, but you know what I'm saying. It's like, you guys know what you're doing. Yeah. It always makes me laugh, how many British series they turn into an American version of the show. I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Is it, you're just like, what are you doing? You ruined it.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think with the majority, that is the case. You do kind of, I mean, you hear of like shows, Gavin and Stacey, which was quite a big sitcom here in the UK, that obviously they attempted. I don't think anything came of it. I think the only time that they did have success was with The Office. But they are very different shows, I think. And obviously Ricky Gervais does such a good job on the British version, but then Steve Carell does something completely different on the American version. Completely different.
Yeah, and Steve Carell, he's a comedic genius in his own right. And I think that's why the show works. But I mean, Ricky Gervais is one of my favorite actors and comedians of all time. Did you watch The Afterlife?
Yes, I've loved. I'm so hooked and can't wait for the next season, which is not far off, I think.
And just the language, like I was here and I think I was dating an American who was very earnest, and I kept offending him accidentally with my sense of humor. And I was like, oh, it's just not getting me. Like, am I a bad person? I don't think I'm a bad person. And I happened to be watching The Afterlife, and it was that episode where he goes up to that little kid in the playground. And I think the kid goes, "You're a pedo." And he was like, "Well, you'd be right, wouldn't you, you fat little ginger?" To you. And I was like, "I'm not a bad person." So it's I really like it. I hope you can use that.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Now, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. But before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to the patients who are listening in hospital, who are currently, not having the best of times? Anything you'd like to say to them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, thank you for listening and to me rabbit on. And, I guess just stay strong and stay hopeful. And it seems really hard at the moment. I actually had a very bad injury last year, and I remember some of those days where I just couldn't see the end of it. But eventually it'll change, and I remember the day I first woke up and I thought, gosh, why do I feel so much better today? And I was not in, I wasn't in agony for a day, and it happens, and you will get better, and to stay strong and be grateful for the very small blessings, however small they may be.
Thank you so much, Katherine. It's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, keep safe. And hopefully we'll have to get you back on sometime.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Have a good day.